Turn of the century, this is one of New York's grand apartment buildings, owned by the family of tycoon John Jacob Astor. Today it's become the Big Apple's largest welfare hotel, where more than 700 people live, crowded into 500 rooms, almost a third of them on public assistance. A lot of old people and single working men live here, but it's also the home of prostitutes, drug addicts, derelict alcoholics, and released patients from the state's mental hospital. And when so many people with so many problems are jammed into so small a space, big trouble, is almost the inevitable end result. So far this year, the building's been the scene of 16 burglaries, 13 assaults, 3 rapes, 16 robberies, and a murder. The Westside Towers has this middle-class neighborhood living in fear.
I am terrified to walk past that building at any hour of the day.
There have been incidents with murders in the building and throwing dogs out the window.
There are alcoholics all over the place, a lot of drug addicts.
This is a real sore spot right in the middle of a community just not really equipped to deal with it.
To the neighbors of the Westside Towers, the hotel seems a closed, dark concentration camp of social problems. We decided to have a look inside. So, accompanied by a hotel tenant, we legally entered the building and tried to talk with residents. Tell me what's going on in this building. Just tell me. That was when one of the hotel's private guards went berserk. He was wearing a badge and carrying a nightstick, but the guard reacted more like a paid goon than a professional security officer. We found out later that he was a notorious bully, well known for roughing up and shaking down the residents. Fortunately for me, a plainclothes policeman wasn't far away. That's him in the light orange shirt, coming in to unentangle me from the gorilla who'd succeeded in doing a job on my nose. We didn't make it inside that day, but we were determined to find out what that guard was so anxious to hide.
There's poor people living up there. There's a lot of good people living up there. We can't afford to go anywhere else. Where are we supposed to be, on the street?
2 days after that brawl at the front door, a local state assemblyman and the president of the Neighborhood Block Association showed up outside the hotel with subpoenas for its financial records. This time I was in the background, disguised by a beard, sunglasses, and a broad-brimmed hat. Standing near the hotel's entrance, I was waiting for a chance to pass inside quietly, while the hotel's management was drawn out to the street to receive the legal papers. In the commotion, I managed to slip in through the front door where the guard had stopped me the last time. This time I got in, carrying a hidden camera. Once inside, I passed along corridors strewn with garbage and trash and down dimly lighted hallways where I eventually hit upon a room so dark that even with the lights on, the camera couldn't properly record what I saw. It was a nightmare, with rotting garbage piled on the floor and bottles on the windowsills filled with urine. I just went up and I filmed rooms where there are bottles filled with urine and garbage every place. And I want to ask the owner about it. Come on, Eddie.
He's not in there.
We had some trouble finding the hotel's manager, Saul Dresner, so we took a full camera crew back into that horrible room. Dresner was already there with the door locked. Dresner refused repeatedly to give us another look at the room, so other steps were taken to bring the Westside Towers into the daylight. About a week later, 6 inspectors from the New York Fire, Health, and Buildings departments raided the hotel unannounced. They began their inspection on the hotel's top floor, where immediately they found corridors piled waist-high with trash, and there was more. Bathrooms infested with roaches, doors hung with trash, and disconnected fire hoses. But the real story of this heartbreak hotel was in the rooms. One former mental patient ran out in fear when we knocked on his door. You can see why. Eddie, come in. Call those inspectors.
Here we are. What do you got here?
Look at
this.
Here, come here. Let's have a health department guy in here. Somebody lives here. What about this? What are you going to do about this?
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
But what are you going to... I mean, there's a person lives in this room.
Why must you want to know who lives here, right?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who lives here.
lives
Nobody
here.
should live here for crying.
Damn it.
Because the problems created by the Westside Towers Hotel have had so severe an impact on this neighborhood, about 400 residents of the West 76th Street area have filled this theater in an effort to state their case to a representative of the owner of the building.
We're tired of accommodating ourselves to noise at all hours, of dirt. We're tired of having to cross the street to avoid the building. We're tired of being harassed. We're tired of telling our children, don't look at that man at what he's doing. The problem has to be solved, and it has to be solved very quickly, because I submit that if it's not solved, the city can write off this neighborhood.
there might be possibly a way, if we all work together sincerely, to try to remedy what is so deplorable to all of us.
For the first time in more than 2 years, a representative of the Westside Towers had come out of the dark and agreed to deal with the outraged neighbors of the hotel. 2 days after that mass meeting, Nathan Glick announced plans to convert the towers into middle-income studio apartments, closing it down once and for all as a burial ground for welfare recipients.
But closing the hotel down, as necessary as that step is really only half the solution to the problem. It removes a menace, a cancer, from the neighborhood. But what happens now to the poor people who, up to this time, have lived in that place? Obviously, suitable alternative housing has to be found, and that responsibility lies as much with the government of this city as it does with the tenants themselves. We checked with representatives in Atlanta, Philadelphia, Indianapolis, Chicago, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, and found that while each of those cities has severe problems about adequate housing for the poor, this city, New York, is apparently the only major town in the country where the politicians have resorted to the welfare hotel as a cheap, convenient dumping ground for people on public assistance. And as you've seen, these hotels are truly the worst of all possible alternatives. They spoil and decay the neighborhoods in which they're situated, and they hurt and can even ultimately corrupt the desperately poor people who are forced to live in them. The Big Apple needs to take a lesson in humanity from some of its sister cities.